I'm Julie Lyles Carr, and this is the Modern Motherhood Podcast from AllMomDoes. Friends, I'm having a hard time these days making my home hospitable. Heck, even just hygienic for the people who live there. So the idea of having people over can seem a bit overwhelming. And in the past, I've busted the budget trying to impress, which only added more stress. But my next guest, Jen Schmidt of Beauty in Bedlam, is going to take the pressure out of the party and give us great tips and tricks for having people over without having a fit. Jen, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much. I am honored to be here.
So introduce us to you just a bit. Tell us about where you live and kiddos and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, well, the basic is I am sitting here from my little Goodwill painted kitchen table in North Carolina via Wisconsin. We're a diehard Packer fan, born and raised in Wisconsin, but we've been in North Carolina for 20 years, so it's definitely home now. I am the mom to 5 children, have just kind of entered a new phase in life because our eldest son just got married a few months ago.
Wow.
So I know it's overwhelming. I'm like, I'm too young in my mind. I'm still, 24, right? So our youngest, though, is in high school, so I still have a few more years with some at home. I have been writing at a blog called Balancing Beauty in Bedlam, kind of my little chicken scratch thoughts for the last 10 years before I even knew what a blog was. And that was when I was in the throes of motherhood, and my purpose in there was just to really seek out the beautiful moments of every day, those little moments that so often we forget about under the laundry and the day-to-day. So that's where the balancing the beauty and the Bedlam moment.
Now, you just mentioned that you're sitting at a reclaimed Goodwill table, and I've got to say, I want people to go to your Instagram account because I was just scrolling through and I saw that you found a $4 dress to wear to a big fancy wedding in New York. Okay, tell them about that and tell the listeners where to find you on Instagram because I want them to see this post.
Okay. Oh, you're so sweet. Well, yes, most every day I am at Instagram, Jen Schmidt, SCHMIDT _ beauty and Bedlam. It's kind of the old fashioned blogging, right? So I love Instagram. But yes, I am a big thrift store repurposer. And so we were invited to a black tie New York City wedding, and I am a country girl at heart. And so I love the idea of dressing fancy for these events. And I've had the honor of going on some red carpet events with movie stars and all different things. But I never want to fork over, $500 or $400 for a gown. So I went to the Goodwill, and it was just God's favor on that day because the lady rolled out a cart, and it must have been a woman who goes to a ton of black tie events because, Julie, there were 7 fancy black tie gowns so she must have just dropped off and I bought 5 of them. And so my niece and myself and my daughter, we all wore these $4 Goodwill, Ralph Lauren, Calvin Klein. It was so much fun.
That is amazing. And I'm telling you, when people take spiritual gift assessments, I think there are a couple of spiritual gifts that get left off. One is the spiritual gift of garage sales. Like one of my girlfriends can throw a garage sale and make enough money to cover her mortgage for a year. I try to do a garage sale. I make $1.98. I don't understand that. And the second one is also the spiritual gift of Goodwill, which that girlfriend of mine also has. Same kind of thing. Walks in and, I think I'll just take this major designer purse and these, major designer shoes that have never been worn. And I go to Goodwill and it's just a different experience. So I applaud anyone who has the gift of garage sale and the gift of Goodwill.
I might be able to change your mind if you went with me. I think if Jesus was walking today, if he can turn water into wine, I think he can turn someone's trash into treasure, right? I think he would hang out at our local thrift store with me. So
I want to see this gift in action. I think it would bless me deeply. Now, is that the best Goodwill you've ever found, or is there another one lurking in the archives that I should know about?
Oh, yeah, no, I have a lot. And it's funny because part of my story, and I actually, in the book, Just Open the Door, there's one whole chapter that I talk about the elephant in the room, and that is finances. Because so many people, when they think of welcoming people into their home, they think, oh, my goodness, I'm a single woman working hard, or I've got tons of kids, and we just have the budget. And so I have spent really the last 20 years trying to encourage women just how great and creative that we can be on a budget. And so I do have, my blog is filled with lots of fun finds.
Excellent. And I think that it really is an elephant in the room when we begin to talk about this topic of hospitality that you address in your brand new book, Just Open the Door. Finances are a big part of that. But let's back up a step. Define for me, what is hospitality? Because, a lot of people have a lot of different ideas about what that word means. How do you define it?
Yeah, I think when we think of that social entertaining, a lot of times it's about the emphasis is going to be on the host. So she's coming to the door, and I kind of love to use the phrase, when a social entertainer opens up the door, she says, hey, here I am, come into my house, come see what I've done for you. Whereas someone who's welcoming a guest with biblical hospitality, the focus is bending low. It's servanthood. It's opening up that door and pointing at them, not literally pointing at them, but saying, there you are. I've been waiting. Oh, come and join me. And we see this modeled with Jesus everywhere that Jesus went. When I think about it, I think Jesus is the hospitality guru, because when he walked this road of welcome, he offered simple invitations. Come and sit with me. Come drink with me. Sup with me. He wanted to gather around the table. And in fact, when we look in the Gospel of Luke, one noted author said that every time we look at Jesus, he was either coming to the table, he was sitting at the table, or he was leaving the table. And so when we look at Jesus and we look at his background, he was essentially homeless. So we often think of hospitality only in terms of inviting people into our home, which in the context of my book, I think there is deep meaning. When we look at how the Church of Acts, people fellowshipped around in homes. There's something very vulnerable that we can do in the context of a home that we can't do, sitting in a Starbucks. But I think of hospitality in so many different layers. We can take our hospitality on the go. My little phrase I love to use is, hey, hospitality will travel. Hospitality on the road, we can do that too. And so I've kind of started saying, Jen, you don't have any excuses, because no matter how busy your schedule is, no matter how often you want to overthink this and overstress and overplan, look at Jesus and remind yourself that you can connect and bring people into your day-to-day life in simple, everyday invitations.
How do you think the bar got so raised on what we consider hospitality? I guess I'm kind of theorizing. I know that within women's ministry, which I do a lot of in my home church, we're constantly trying to dream up bigger and better events and experiences. Right. And we feel this responsibility to try to dazzle. And yet there's this little rebel part of me that is like, but you know what? I'm about the business of trying to connect people, not necessarily entertain them. So how did we get to this place where hospitality has become this thing that seems so out of reach, as you mentioned before, financially, time-wise? If we don't feature ourselves as, very creative people, then we're like, I can't come up with the ultimate dinner party. How do we get there?
Well, you and I can be rebels together on that. And I'm a huge proponent of women's ministries. I love it. In fact, I host my own women's conference. So if there's anyone that can understand that rub, it's me. We want to bring beauty to women that we're serving, right, and ministering to, because God is a God of creativity. He is a God of order. He loves beautiful things. We look at Queen Esther, and she threw the dinner parties to save a nation, right? And yet I think if we don't pull back and understand that social media and what it's done with the development of Instagram and with Pinterest and with Facebook, I think that goes back to how the bar has been raised. Because all of a sudden we think that we can't invite people into the messy. We can't invite women into our home before we try and curate this picture perfect life. We've all been there, right? We've all been there an hour before we've invited people to our home, and all of a sudden we turn into these crazy woman.
There is nothing, I'm telling you, Jen, it's kind of like that estrogen rush at that time of the month. There's no pure form of clean in my world. I get that same kind of a clean rush when I am going to have people over. Like, things get dealt with that have not been dealt with. But it sounds like I'm probably sliding more into, an episodic kind of hospitality when I hit that kind of cleaning energy.
Oh, I know. I wrote one of the chapters as a do-over because I did the same thing. And I had to write about, I needed to go in the middle after these women came because I had left our eldest son, his poor little heart splayed open up in his room because here I am welcoming women in to do life together and share this authentic community. And minutes before, I'm screaming at my children. And it makes me emotional because I think, really, do we want our kids to look back that in the name of proclaiming, Jesus' love for other women, we leave our kids dangling like that? And so I've realized, and I think the Lord has impressed upon my heart, that when I start really overstressing, when I start overthinking this whole notion, when I feel that anxiety, then it's entertaining and it's about me. It's about me. And I've really had to pray before and just say, hey, Lord, you know what? Give me that red flag. Let me know that this is not about me because goodness gracious, you have lots of kids. I have lots of kids. Do we really expect women to come into our home thinking that we live life in this perfectly polished house? That's just not how it is. And so fortunately for me, because I no longer see opening my door as entertaining, and I really do see it as this heart of pointing others to him and wanting to link arms. And I don't do it well, but I want them not to be intimidated. I want them to come in and say, oh my goodness, Jen, okay, this is okay. She's got laundry maybe piled in the corner, or it's okay. I can do this too. And so my desire is that we point others to him, and nowhere in the scripture do we have any chapters about Pinterest perfect lives. We have people in the Bible that are modeling messes and difficulties and how this amazing Savior of ours come in and linked arms with us and said, it's okay. And so there has been times now, I don't want people to get off the hook for like having hygienic houses, right?
My hospitality dictum is this: you can come over, just make sure you have had your tetanus shot updated. I have to say, I fail the hygiene test more often than not, but I'm with you. I have a standard that it should be engaged.
My goal is, okay, you can be guaranteed that the bathroom is going to be clean, and I will have picked up the major living spaces like the kitchen and the family room. But do not go opening any of the doors you think might be the bathroom, because if it is closet, things are going to fall out on your head. And I've been known to have like a little stack of clutter in the corner, and literally, Julie, I have put a tablecloth over it and stuck a candle on top.
Amen.
I went, you know what? Then I am not going to be worrying if someone says, I'm really lonely, because let's be honest, loneliness is this huge epidemic these days. And we need to realize that women ache for connection. And so let's go back to what you said about women's ministries and trying to create these big and better events. I have honestly, in conversation, because I'm like you, probably on all these different committees at church, and we spend hours and hours trying to brainstorm XYZ to connect people. And I finally just said, you know what? In the 3 hours that we've been brainstorming, not that there's not good and beautiful work that was done, right?
Right.
That if every single one of us had picked up the phone and called somebody and invited them to spend an hour together, I said, right then, culture as we know it within the church, culture as we know it within our neighborhood, things start happening. So I almost feel like we need to stop brainstorming, and we need to stop coming up with these elaborate ministry models and realize if we look at what Jesus did, simple invitations, it's the way to go, because it's a trickle-down effect. We invite someone into community and their lives are impacted, and then that person invites one person in, and it's not just, with believers. It's Jesus used this time around the table for discipleship and very notably evangelism too. And so I don't know about you, but I'm not the queen of like writing 4 spiritual laws on the napkin anymore. I want to just look to my neighbor and just say, hey, I bought some extra chicken breasts on sale this week and we're throwing them on the grill. I know we haven't really gotten a time to connect. Why don't you, can you spontaneously come over for a cookout tomorrow night? That's where I think we start seeing the culture shifting.
Back with Jen in just a moment. In this season of giving, let's not miss an important opportunity to give some of life's most basic needs to children across the globe. You've made a list and checked it twice, but there's something you don't want to forget. When it comes to spreading true Christmas cheer this year, you can give a gift that can change the world. For just a little over $1 a day, when you sponsor a child in need through Compassion International, you'll provide health, educational, and spiritual care for that child. You'll spread the joy of the Christmas season to places in the world that needs its light. So make sure you've got this on your list and go to compassion.com/allmomdoes to sponsor a child today. That's compassion.com/allmomdoes. I just had an opportunity to talk with Linya Heitzig, who ministers to women in Albuquerque and has a really cool network and different events that she's doing and all that. And she talked about in some work that she has done in refugee camps, actually in Iran, Iraq, other areas of the world, what the military calls second order of effects, meaning that if you do something very simple within a community, in this case, if a soldier just kicks a soccer ball over a compound wall, then what begins to happen is children begin to gather and they begin to do some pickup games of soccer, and they'll invite the soldiers, and then the moms will come out to see what's going on. And all of a sudden, from one simple soccer ball going over the wall, you get this second order of effects because it has this ripple effect into the community. And I feel like that's what you're saying. If you just throw one on sale chicken breast over the wall, it can have a second order of effects within your community that can supersede the best marketing plan, the most well thought out event, any of those kinds of things. If we just do exactly the title of your book, if we just open the door. Now, I know we sometimes avoid this idea of hospitality. It feels heavy by definition. We worry about the finances, all of those kinds of things. Do you think that fear, our own sense of fear and worth, plays into it? Because let's face it, we do judge each other. I mean, I have had some people show up at my house with the 8 kids, with all the chaos that we're engaged in. And it's gotten back to me that some people have said, wow, the house is a barn. And I'm like, heck yes, it's a barn. Do you see all the livestock that we're trying to keep sheltered? But we do have that concern about, being judged. How do we mitigate that?
And isn't it so sad that we've even got to talk about this? But it's a very, very real issue. When I talk with women about some of their fears and what keeps them from opening the door, it's your basics. Like, I don't know how to cook. I don't have a pretty enough house. And, I don't know really how to carry a conversation. But it boils down to, fear. And we know fear is a liar, but it doesn't matter. It still roots deep because we're inviting people in, not just for a meal and into our home, but into our lives. And that is a really vulnerable place to be, because why are we so judgmental sometimes? I mean, I just don't get it. I mean, it's heartbreaking for me to have to acknowledge that you're exactly right. Women judge. And so one of my encouragements is to start small and to take those baby steps. And that song that's so popular right now, Fear is a Liar. Mm-hmm. It is. And yet Satan, he is no fool, because where does it goes back to the Garden of Eden, right? Where he tempted Eve to do more, to be more, it comes back though to pride. Mm-hmm. And that's hard, because that makes me feel like I'm judgy, like I'm getting my fingers out. But when I'm looking in my own heart, those times where I am fearful of being judged, it comes down to the pride factor. And so I've really had to wrestle with my own heart attitudes about that. And because I'm not, like, if you say there's the type A people and I'm the type Z person, my house is never completely orderly. I always do have a little clutter. I always have like one wall that has 6 different colors of blue because I haven't been able to decide what to paint. And then it just sits there. And like you, I had a handful of women who came over, and one woman, it rattled her so much, this wall that had this paint on, that she literally said, where's your paint? I will help you right now finish painting that. And I was like, it's okay. If I'm okay with it, you got to be okay with it. So I was like, okay, I felt a little more for her because you could tell like her spirit was very unsettled with
she was getting a rash. Yeah.
She didn't believe it was my new paint style, but.
I think though that you really speak into, Jen, something that I keep finding in myself that rises up is that there are times I confuse home and house.
Yeah.
My house is different than my home. My home is the tone that I set. It's the values by which my family lives. It's all the things that we're doing throughout that's home. Yeah. The house is a building, and I am grateful for the building. But I think part of it for me, I moved around a lot as a kid. And so house began to take this sort of preeminent place for me because location, and stability of location took on this really heightened sense of identity. How often do you think that we are subject to getting our identities wrapped up in the physical shelter that we sometimes call home, but really is a house?
Oh, you're absolutely. I mean, that's such a great distinction because there is this pressure for us to create this beautiful house, right? And we've allowed, HGTV. What are those 4 letters? HGTV. I mean, we've allowed the different aspects of beautiful houses to negate the warmth and the safety and the haven that we create within our home. And so when the greatest gift that I can be given when I invite people in and I just open the door is that people feel safe, that they feel connected, that they feel heard and loved and valued. And I have had more than one person just say, Jen, your house, it's never perfect, but there's no place that we feel like we can kick up we can take our shoes off and kick up our feet because we're at home when you invite us in. And so for me, that is, that helps me differentiate and realize, okay, I give tips and tricks on my blog on how to create fun, frugal, beautiful houses. But I think that more importantly is that then after I give some great tips on painting your walls or repainting furniture in your house, my desire is that people can utilize that. The house is a vehicle. The house is a vehicle for us to be his image bearers. The house is a vehicle to create the home. And whether we are doing that in a college dorm room, whether we're doing that in a very small apartment in, New York City, or where they're doing it on a homestead like I am out in the country with acres, we have the opportunity to use our door as a vehicle to welcome people into community. There's that buzzword, but more important, to allow, especially our neighbors who don't know the Lord, we welcome them in and we love on them. And hopefully they see the love poured out among our family or how we treat them. And they know that there's something different about us. And so that's my desire as we think of how one invitation can change a generation, no matter people's personality. A lot of introverts think, well, this is it's just not my gift. Well, unfortunately, when we look in Scripture, pursue hospitality, it doesn't say pursue hospitality if you're an extrovert with a beautiful home who loves to cook. It just says pursue hospitality. And so I know that the Lord has equipped every single one of your listeners with the exact tools, the exact gift, the exact house, quote unquote, to create into a home to invite people in. And so I love knowing that it's so much easier, so much simpler than we try and make it to be. And it just takes the baby step. And that's what I hope when people read, as people are giving me their feedback, and women write me their stories. I mean, I have been in tears almost daily with women who said that they have finished the book and in fact, 4 chapters in, they stopped and they picked up the phone and then they're telling me their unique and special stories of how for the first time in 4 or 5 years, they've had people into their home. And it's just, I love celebrating with people online. It's been so fun.
That is awesome. And I love, again, that statement that your house is a vehicle for creating home. I think that is so powerful to invite people in. Now, you and I talked about our tetanus shot update worthy interiors and the kind of grace that we really hope people can bring when we do open our door. But, there's another personality style out there. And I'm so glad you brought up extrovert and introvert. I think that's a very important thing to note because it's harder for some people to really be willing to open the door because they're a little more shy. Home is a haven. They really, have a hard time opening that door. But I have friends too who really struggle because they, for whatever reason, and I don't mean this in a judgmental way, they're clean freaks, and keeping the integrity of their homes at a certain level, it has a lot to do with them feeling peaceful, with their souls feeling peaceful. It's really hard for them to invite people in because people are messy. People do break things. People do want to wear their shoes inside your house. How do we help people who are struggling from a perspective of, no, the house is always guest ready? That's not the issue. It's that it interrupts the flow of things in such a way that can be really unsettling for some people.
And I know, and that's, I so hear that tension because I have a really good friend who we've had this heart talk, and without stepping on toes, I think it comes back to the whole stewardship principle. Do we really believe that what Scripture says is truth? And as followers of Christ, do we just pick and choose those verses that we want to listen to if we really are modeling the way that Jesus did? And so I look at it stewardship. When I think of my house, and when we talk about it being a vehicle, I also want to say it's all His. And so life is messy. The Scriptures is filled, like I said, it's filled with messy situations. And sometimes I want to say when things are the hardest, that is where we rely the most on Him, and we become more like Him when we put ourselves into situations that are really challenging for us. In the Bible study, or actually in the book too, I have a section where I talk about the uncomfortable yes. And it's when hospitality is really difficult. And especially it's about reaching out to those people in our life that are really difficult. And I think there's a parallel here is I like to call those people the sandpaper people. Those are people that put me on edge or really pull me out of my comfort zone. And I would rather just hang out with people like me, who think like me, who act like me, but we're called to reach out to the sandpaper people. And so the more I'm around people, they make me more like Jesus. And so I think this is one of those situations where as we invite people in and we're really unsettled and this is harder for us, we're allowing the Lord to use us in such a powerful way because it's messy and it's challenging, and we're becoming more like Christ in the process of walking like He walked and being His disciple.
I love that you bring up, it is all His. And so, yes, there are faithful stewardship things we should be doing to take care well of what He's given us, but also to take care to share well what He's given us. And I think that knowing how to hold on loosely with a certain level of curation that is our responsibility, but a huge level of responsibility to share and use what He's given, so important. And I'm glad you brought up the Bible study. There is a 7-week Bible study available through Lifeway that goes along with Jen's new book, Just Open the Door, that allows you to get in community and in groups to sit down and discuss some of these things and be face to face and think through and look at biblical examples of what it means to just open the door. Now, I wanted to ask you too, I had kind of an interesting question for you. When it comes to this whole idea of people saying, well, you know what? I just don't have the gift of hospitality. You have already mentioned, look, none of us get out of it. That is one of those things that we are asked to do. And I do think it's important for us to note as well that yes, in an age where we do need to learn how to say no to certain things, we also do need to, at times, be willing to say an uncomfortable yes. Yeah. But here's the question. We all have those people in our lives who struggle with appropriate boundaries, and particularly once maybe they have been invited into our home or there's someone who just doesn't know how to leave. How do we deal with that? And making sure we're saying yes to sandpaper people and making sure that we're saying yes to using what God has given us for His glory and for hospitality to His people. How do we also make sure that we are also somewhat protective of family life and time in a way that is honoring?
Okay, this is kind of a funny story, but one of my friends she is a complete introvert to the point where she says, I want people into my home, but I'll be honest, I only have a 2-hour window where I can do that. And what I love about this friend of mine, and I write in the book, I interview some of my introvert friends because this is a big issue. Now, she will literally turn the lights off, or when she invites people, she will say if they overstay, this is with people that she's friends with. She makes it clear. She goes, you know what? You guys can stay as long, just lock the door behind you. I'm going to bed. Okay, that's so refreshing. I don't say, let's not start off with that, right?
Yeah, right.
I think it's okay to put boundaries on. When you invite someone, if you only have the bandwidth for 2 hours worth of conversation, then just start with like an ice cream social in your backyard. It doesn't even need to begin with something around the inside literal table. It could be something like a cookout, or it could be just for dessert. And I think you are so right. When we take these baby steps of saying, Lord, okay, I want to be willing. I want to be available. This is really hard for me. So it's okay to put boundaries on, because a lot of our schedules are maxed. I mean, we're maxed out, and margin is important. So try and find this balance with margin and boundaries, and start small with the outdoor cookout or an ice cream social. I give a lot of ideas and creative suggestions, and one of them is popsicles and pop-in for parents and kids in the neighborhood. And you send the kids around, or you send a group text and you say, I would love to get to know more of you. How about we do a popsicles and pop-in at the end of our cul-de-sac on Saturday night, or, whatever. So there's easy ways to still say, yes, Lord, use me. I want to be willing and available, but just doing it in a way that speaks into who God has created us to be too.
Right. Honors who you are. And one thing that I have at times found to be successful too, and I love the idea of popsicles and pop in, is to actually create something that has an end time. So we're going to circle up from 6 to 8 o'clock. And I'm what I call an ambivert. I love people. I love collecting people, but to refresh, I have to get away. And sometimes if I know I have an end time, it makes me more willing on the front end to be more open to be hospitable. Absolutely. Instead of thinking, oh my word, I'm going to be locked in for 6 hours. So maybe putting an end time on some of those invitations as well is very helpful. So, well, Jen, it is so great to get to chat with you on this whole idea about how to be hospitable, and really looking at the definition of that, how to honor our own personalities within it, and all of the tips and tricks you have for opening the door so that we can begin to build and help influence our communities in such a simple way. Jen, thanks for all you are doing to inspire us and to help us get outside of our comfort zones, whether we've got messy houses like mine, and that great tip of putting tablecloths over that pile in the corner and topping it with a candle, or if we've got the clean freaks in the group who are a little worried about people messing up their marble counters. Jen, I just so appreciate all the encouragement you give us to be the kind of friendly, open people that God really wants us to be. Thanks so much for all you're doing.
You're so welcome.
Check out beautyandbedlam.com for all kinds of amazing resources from Jen, and look her up on Instagram as well, where she's a daily dose of enthusiasm and comedy and all kinds of great ideas. And while you're there, I'd love to connect with you too on the socials. You'll find me as Julie Lyles Carr, and my website is julielylescarr.com. AllMomDoes. You need this in your life. It's a community, a website, a place on all the socials where you can connect with other women in your season of life, a place for friendship and encouragement. Check out AllMomDoes.com. It takes the best team to get this content out to you each week, and that means a huge thank you to our amazing producer, Donna Toti, and our fearless content coordinator, Rebecca Beckett. They are the best. Next week, she's on your television each and every day with her work for Inside Edition, CBS, and a variety of sports broadcasting, and she's going to talk about how she's kept her faith in the intense television industry. She's Megan Alexander, and we'll talk to her next week on the Modern Motherhood Podcast. I'll see you then.